Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, Evelyn Kelly from Orphan Drug Consulting has been shortlisted in the emerging category of this year's EY Entrepreneur of the Year programme. Operating in the ever-evolving biotech environment, the company needs to quickly adapt to both the needs of its clients and emerging trends in the healthcare treatment space. Evelyn joins us now to tell us exactly how they go about it. Evelyn, maybe you could start the interview by providing us with an insight into your own background.
Good morning, Carl. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. So I'm a pharmacist by training. So from Carlow originally, so was brought up there and qualified as a pharmacist in Aberdeen. And I came home and worked in community pharmacy for a number of years in the Wexford and Carlow region, actually, before I moved into the industry. So I started out my career in industry with United Drug. Then I moved to Shire Pharmaceuticals. And my last role in the industry was supporting rest of world supply chain and compliance for PTC Therapeutics. It's a small biotech in Dublin.
And Evelyn, I do believe that healthcare was in your blood.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my mum, Mary Kelly, is the public health nurse in Clonroach in County Wexford, so for sure, yes.
So how did you identify a gap in the market for orphan drug consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was working in Shire and PTC Therapeutics, you know, when we were working in these companies that you're really trying to get rare disease products, which is what we focus on, so products for illnesses that are not very common in the population, so it's small volume products that we're looking at. So when you're looking at that, you're really trying to get products on the market as quickly as possible. And particularly in the case when I worked for PTC Therapeutics and working with my colleagues across compliance and other areas, we really were trying to get the product launched as quickly as we could. And that product was for an illness called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a fatal muscular wasting disease in boys. So we were really trying to get that medicine to the patients as quickly as possible. And I found very much that there was a gap where I was hiring in consultants to support me in the different aspects that I needed support in from a supply chain perspective. But, you know, when I was looking at what I needed, I would ask a question, well, what's the best distribution pathway or what's the best manufacturer? But that answer then often, you know, wouldn't necessarily incorporate in the quality assurance aspects that I would need to consider, or the regulatory aspects, or the tax aspects that I would need to consider. So that's really where I saw a gap in the market. And I just thought, you know, this is something that I can do. This is something I can start. And with my background in both quality assurance and supply chain, I started up Orphan Drug Consulting. And here we are 5 years later.
So you've been highly successful over the past 5 years, but how did you achieve that success?
Yeah, so I think with what we do and what we offer, you know, it really has supported our clients, which are typically smaller biotechs initially, in launching their products quicker to a rest of world market. So it would have been initially a lot of US companies that were coming to launch in Europe. The fact that we were headquartered in Ireland supported that also, where they also set up their offices in Ireland. And then we launched the products and supported them from a European perspective. And then as the business grew, you know, word of mouth grew, our reputation grew, our ability to support product getting to the market quicker from a technical perspective. You know, we had a lot of other companies approach us as well, more European companies looking at rest of world. And we have experience and expertise on the team, you know, across all markets. We've launched in over 70 markets globally across the team. And then in the last couple of years, of course, really what accelerated us moving out of rare diseases into non-rare disease products also was the vaccine development and the interest and the need for vaccines. So we very much supported a lot of the vaccine operational setup for a number of companies in the last couple of years also. So yeah, it just went from there, Carl.
Evelyn, when I'm thinking about new drug development, I'm thinking about scientific aspects, the clinical aspect, the funding, and then the technical services. So you come in at the technical point. At what stage in the development of a new drug does that happen at? And then what's the full range of services that you provide?
Absolutely. So from my perspective, the earlier that we come into the process, the better. So if you think about a pharmaceutical company and a product and how it starts up in a small company, there's somebody that's an expert in the science. And then you have somebody that's an expert in understanding how that product will work on the body, so on the clinical aspects. And they're the person that sets up the clinical trials and oversees that. And then obviously, in order to complete that work, you need funding. So there's somebody that's an expert in receiving that funding. what we do then is we come in and we manage aspects like the supply chain, understanding how you distribute the product through trial and through commercial, how you make it, how you manufacture the product, the best way to manufacture it, what sort of packaging it needs, and making sure all of that is in compliance with what it says in the protocols and the market authorization and in the licenses that you need in this highly regulated environment to get this medicine to patients. We also support a lot of the customs aspects, the VAT aspects as well, and support a lot of the artwork. If you look at a pharmaceutical pack, you'd be amazed about the level of technical detail that goes into what appears on your pack, the branding of it. There's requirements around Braille, there's requirements around readability, which means that, somebody has to be able to pick up the patient information leaflet and read it in layman's terms. So all those aspects are what we support.
Where do you see the challenges for your clients when transitioning from the clinical to the commercial environment?
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges I see are ones that have been there for a while. So reimbursement for these products can be a challenge for our clients, and making sure that my job then is to make sure that there's continuity of supply and making sure that the patients still keep access to the medicines, even as these negotiations are ongoing. We don't get involved. We're not involved in that. My job is supply. My job is to making sure our patients receive it. So when they're coming off clinical trial, that there's no interruption of their treatment, particularly if it's been beneficial. We work with a lot of pediatric conditions, and that's really critical when you're looking at those when they're for children as well. And I think really where the challenges are in supply is you don't really know what's going to come up short next. So trying to keep ahead of that for our clients, trying to make sure that the inventory increases are kept and even increased at this stage as well, and making sure there is sufficient inventory of components and products. Because, at the moment in the world, anything can happen, as we know, Carol. There's a war in certain areas where we're still not over the pandemic. There's still a lot of people need access to medicines. So we're really working, and things are busier than ever. People are very interested in their health now. They really understand the framework around regulations now. They're asking a lot of questions, and they really want access to medicine. And I do notice an increased interest and awareness and demand for that. And we're just trying to keep up with that demand at the moment and make sure that we support our clients to give their patients access to medicine.
And Evelyn, when you're approached by a client that wants some assistance in relation to arranging a manufacturer for their product or indeed a distributor for it, what process do you go through?
Yeah, well, first of all, we need to establish what exactly the client wants. So often you have to work with the client to really help them understand the regulations and the framework that they're looking to go into. So, it could be a US client that wants to manufacture for their rest of world supply in Europe. Their supply chain is important, like where is what's called the active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is the active ingredient in medicines. Is about 4 or 5 steps to the production of the medicine that you receive in your hand. So understanding where that initial supply is coming from as well. We look at all those aspects. We look at the volume, which is patient-driven, how much medicine they're going to need, what type of product it is. Often in some of these instances that I'm working in, there's a very limited selection of manufacturers and distributors that are available for our clients, particularly when you're looking at certain storage conditions or certain manufacturing techniques.
And of course, there is a rising trend in relation to the growth in personalised treatment for rare diseases, isn't there?
Yes, very much so. It's very much the new thing. I'm very excited about that. I'm just working at the moment on one medicine, and it's really exciting about how patients will be cured. And, these are curative treatments that are coming into the market in the next number of years. Very difficult because you obviously have to receive, you have to receive DNA, blood, different aspects for the patient. Then you have to bring that DNA to the manufacturing site. You have to manufacture it. You have to release it. And then you have to get it back to the patient, all within a very strict time frame and under, highly regulated transport and distribution conditions. And it's a big investment for the patient. So in one of the products I'm looking at, we're supporting at the moment, it's about a 12-month time frame for the patient by the time they give the blood to my client, and then they come back, and then they essentially undergo chemotherapy where their red blood cells are destroyed, and then they're regenerated with this treatment. So when you think about the commitment to the patient, we can't get it wrong. And really getting that, looking at the legislation that's required, looking at the framework, the manufacturers, and there's very limited manufacturers that can support this particular type of technology. Actually, at the moment, it is growing, and it's growing in line with the needs of the patients and the needs with what's coming out and the technology that's coming from the companies. But, working with those manufacturers and that supply chain to get it to the patient it's very exciting, but it's very challenging as well. And we're involved in that and supporting a lot of that mapping out of those supply chains at the moment and really planning for success, Carol, that we'll get this medicine to patients quickly.
Now, you were recently nominated in the emerging category of the EY Entrepreneur of the Year programme. Firstly, Evelyn, why did you enter this competition? And secondly, what are your hopes for the programme?
Absolutely. I mean, the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year programme, it's such an honour and privilege to be selected as a finalist for the programme. And I'd like to thank the Ernst & Young for this opportunity. It's just so amazing. I entered because it's such an amazing opportunity, and the programme is fantastic. And it's not a competition. When you enter and you become a finalist, you really enter into different events. We had a Meet the Finalists day in Dublin a couple of weeks ago, and it was just brilliant to meet both the finalists in this year, but also the alumni of previous years, to listen to these people and hear their stories and the support and the inspiration, that I've already received a couple of weeks in is incredible. We are also invited on a CEO retreat, which is taking place in Texas this year. And that's a week really where you're immersed in kind of best practices of business. And, there's a wide range of people travel with the finalists. It's not just the finalists, but alumni come along as well. And to be part of, that group of people, to have that kind of interaction with business people in Ireland, it's just a fantastic opportunity. And, my hopes for the programme, it's not just the programme for this year. I want to be a part of this, lifelong.
And Evelyn, finally this morning, if anyone is listening that's interested in exploring opportunities in the biotech space, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think, the advice I would have is go for it. It's such a fantastic industry to work in. I would encourage, anyone who has an interest in working in the area, be it, via an employee role or via an entrepreneur role. If somebody has an idea that they're looking to, expand on, there's lots of support available, particularly in Ireland. Ireland is one of the best countries globally for, supporting biotech.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Evelyn Kelly from Orphan Drug Consulting, and I wish the company continued success on its path to future growth.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.